The dig site on Crete had already given up its secrets once before, a labyrinth, a myth, a legend carved in stone. But Ethan Kross wasn't interested in myths. He was interested in bones. The find had come on a Tuesday, the kind of gray, salt-stung morning where the Aegean wind pushed dust into your teeth and the scaffolding creaked like old grief. Ethan had been on his knees for 6 hours, brush in hand, coaxing something enormous from the limestone shelf when his glove touched something that did not feel like rock. It felt like armor. He called no one. He photographed it himself. He bagged the tissue samples, yes, tissue, preserved in mineralized resin so perfect it looked amber gold, and he shipped them quietly to 3 different labs under 3 different names, because Ethan Kross had learned a long time ago that the world did not reward people who found things it wasn't ready for. He was 34 years old. He had already been laughed out of 2 universities. He was not going to be laughed out of a 3rd. The alien ship appeared in orbit 11 months later. It did not blast trumpets or send encoded radio greetings. It simply arrived, the way a storm arrives, you look up and it is already there, and you cannot remember a sky without it. The Veilchen called themselves scholars. They wore their pale, four-fingered hands with the careful grace of surgeons, and their eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a soft triangle, held the particular exhaustion of a species that had been watching the cosmos for longer than humans had been standing upright. They came for knowledge exchange, they said. They stayed because of Ethan's bones. Dr. Lyra Vera was the Veilchen's lead xenogeneticist, and she had spent the last 3 centuries mapping the genetic histories of 47 civilizations across 9 star systems. She had never, in 300 years, seen anything like what the humans sent her. The sample had arrived in the formal data exchange, the humans offering archaeological findings in good faith, the way young species always did, a little desperate to prove they had something worth trading. Most of it was predictable: pottery shards, ancient grains, fossilized insects. And then, buried between a Neolithic grave report and a Bronze Age textile analysis, the Crete sequence. Lyra had read it 3 times before she called her assistant. "Run it again," she said. "Doctor, we've run it again." The sequence came back identical. 44% match to the Dracari fossil record. She pressed her 3 fingers to her sternum, an old Veilchen gesture that meant this cannot be. The Dracari were extinct. They had been extinct for 60 million years. They were the closest thing the known galaxy had to a god species, creatures of impossible biology, flight-capable despite mass ratios that violated Veilchen aerodynamic models, body temperatures that could melt titanium alloy, nervous systems so complex that even their fossilized brain matter had no analog in living biology. Every civilization in the Veilchen Compact had a Dracari story. Humans called them dragons. And somehow, the bones of a Dracari had been found embedded in a limestone cliff on a small, warm, irrelevant planet in a backwater solar system. Lyra boarded the shuttle to Earth the same day. She found Ethan Kross in a storage unit in Athens. He was surrounded by plaster casts, field notebooks, and 3 empty coffee cups, and he looked at her the way humans looked at things they hadn't decided to trust yet, cautious, measuring, ready. "You're here about the Crete sample," he said. "Not a question." "Yes." Lyra set her scanner on his workbench. "How much do you know about what you found?" "Enough to know I wasn't supposed to find it." He crossed his arms. The tissue preservation was too perfect. The bone density doesn't match any known megafauna. The cranial cavity is 3 times larger than it should be for the skull dimensions. He paused. "And there are what look like hollow channels running through the long bones that I cannot explain." Lyra looked at him carefully. "The channels are for thermal regulation. The creature needed to vent superheated plasma from its digestive system." Ethan was very still for a moment. Then he said, "Show me the data." She showed him everything. The Dracari fossil record. The genetic mapping. The 60-million-year-old extinction event, still debated among Veilchen paleogeneticists, possibly a cosmic impact, possibly something deliberate, possibly something no one had yet thought to look for. Ethan listened without interrupting, which Lyra was not accustomed to. Humans interrupted. It was one of their most exhausting qualities. But Ethan Cross listened the way deep water is still, not empty, just holding. When she finished, he pulled out his own notebook and opened it to a page dense with handwriting and margin sketches. He turned it toward her. "I wasn't just finding bones," he said. "I was finding context. This stratum sits below the Minoan ash layer, which puts it pre-eruption, pre-Thera, which means it's older than we thought. But look here," he tapped a sketch. "This isn't a grave. It's a foundation." Lyra leaned closer. "Something built around these remains," Ethan continued. "The limestone wasn't natural deposition. The arrangement is deliberate. Someone entombed this creature with intention." He met her 3 eyes without flinching. "You said the Dracari were extinct 60 million years ago." "Yes. So how did its bones end up in a structure that humans built?" The silence that followed was the kind that changes the shape of everything that came after it. They worked together for 8 months. Lyra had expected the collaboration to be difficult. Humans were chaotic, imprecise, loud, and they ate at irregular intervals for reasons that seemed entirely emotional rather than metabolic. She had expected Ethan Cross to be a useful source of local knowledge and little else. She had not expected him to be right so many times. He found the second sight before her models predicted it. He identified the ceremonial significance of the bone arrangement when 3 of her senior analysts had classified it as random. He looked at a scatter of mineral deposits and read them like a language, because that was what they were. Humans had been encoding information in stone since before they understood what information was. "Your species has a remarkable relationship with pattern recognition," she told him one evening, as the Athens lights spread below the window of their shared research space. "We're a young species," Ethan said, not looking up from his laptop. "We've had to learn fast. Figure out what's dangerous, what's useful, what's meaningful. Pattern recognition kept us alive. It kept you more than alive." Lyra set down her scanner. "Ethan, I need to tell you something I have not told my superiors yet." He looked up then. "The Dracari genetic material in your fossil." She chose her words with the care of someone carrying something fragile. "We found a partial sequence match in living organisms." He waited. "In humans," she said. "Not all humans. A small percentage. A scattered genetic echo, passed down through generations so diluted it reads as noise. Until you compare it to the Dracari sequence." She pulled up the overlay on her screen. 2 spirals, imperfect mirror images. Your species did not simply find Dracari remains. Your species has Dracari ancestry. The room was very quiet. 60 million years, Ethan said slowly. That's before Homo sapiens. That's before the genus. That's before the order. Yes. Something survived, he said. Something from that species survived, and it bred into our evolutionary line, and we've been carrying it ever since without knowing. Yes. He leaned back. And then, because he was Ethan Cross, and because he had been laughed out of 2 universities and had spent his adult life believing things before they were proven, he almost smiled. "That's why we never gave up on the dragon stories," he said quietly. "Every culture on Earth. Every mythology. Serpents with wings and fire. Creatures of impossible size and terrible wisdom." He looked at her. "We weren't imagining them. We were remembering them." Lyra Vera had catalogued 47 civilizations. She had interviewed species who crossed stars, who bent light, who had watched galaxies turn. None of them had made her feel, in that particular moment, quite so small. "What do you intend to do with this information?" she asked. Ethan closed his notebook. Picked up his coffee. Looked at the lights of the city below, A city built on older cities, cities built on ruins, ruins built on myth, myth built on bone. What humans always do, he said. Which is. He looked at her, and his eyes held something ancient and patient and impossible. Dig deeper.